Welcome back, my beautiful students. So today we're going to learn how to solve equations with the variable that is being squared or cubed. So how are we going to do this? Well, first by identifying the variable in the equation and then by identifying the exponent. So we need to determine whether it's being squared or cubed. Then by finding the square root or the cube root on both sides. And finally, finding the number that times itself to give you the solution. So now we need to take a look at the images that I have attached to this slide. Look at the bottom. What do you notice? What do you wonder? Go ahead and pause this video and look at them. The first 5 images are squares. And I agree with you. Did you notice that too? The first square is a 2 by 2, which gives us the area of 4. Then we have a 3 by 3 square, which gives us an area of 9. A 4 by 4 square, which gives us the area of 16, and so on. Then the last image, that looks different. Did you notice that was a 3D? Have some of you guys actually play with these? I've tried, never been successful. If you've actually been successful at it, you beat me at something. All right, so let's continue. So our first example is, how do we square a number? Well, we read the first item as 1 square, or 1 to the power of 2. Now, our brains try to play funny tricks because they're trying to always do what they already know. But you're going to train your brain that every time it sees 1 to the power of 2 is the same as 1 times 1, and 1 times 1 is equal to 1. Now let's tell our brain that the next item is read as 2 square, which is the same as 2 by 2, or 2 times 2, which equals 4. I know this is like easy for some of you guys, but let's keep going. 3 square. 3 square is the same as 3 times 3, and 3 times 3 equals 9. Then again, why are we writing this out? Because we want to make sure that our brain knows that 4 square is the same as 4 times 4, which equals 16, not 8. And I know some of you guys are like, oh, she got me. And you know what? Those are the common misconceptions students do. So it's not just you, it's everybody. Why? Because our brain works like that. So we just got to train it. So let's exercise those brain. What are you going to tell it? 5 square is the same as? Yes, 5 times 5, which equals 25. Now, on a side note, something that is going to be useful later on is remembering the following. Negative 1 square is negative 1 times negative 1, which equals positive 1. Negative 2 square is equal to negative 2 times negative 2, which equals positive 4. Negative 3 square equals negative 3 times negative 3, which equals positive 9. Have you started to notice something? That anytime you square a negative integer, the product is positive. Again, keep that in mind. So now I want you to pause the video and I want you to calculate the perfect square for 6 through 15. Please pause the video. You'll never know until you try. Okay, so what did you get for 6 square? Hopefully you remember to tell your brain it's going to be worth the effort of you writing down the expanded form, which is 6 by 6, or 6 times 6, which equals 36. Check your work along with me. If you didn't pause the video, it's not too late. Go ahead and pause the video. I want you to really try it on your own. Okay, so let's keep going. 7 square. 7 square is the same as 7 times 7, which equals, 49. 8 square is the same as 8 times 8, which equals 64. 9 square is equal to 9 times 9, which equals 81. How do you say the next one? Did you say 10 square? I agree with you. Which is the same as 10 times 10, which equals 100. FYI, we will be using the base of 10 to the power of a number later on in scientific notation. All right, let's keep going. 11 square. Did you write 11 times 11, which is equal to 121? If you did, good job. 12 square is the same as 12 times 12, which equals 144. You're doing it. 13 square is the same as 13 times 13, which equals 169. And once again, if you didn't pause the video earlier, I would really encourage you to pause the video now and see if you can finish the last two. I believe in you. I know you could do it. Okay. So 14 square is 14 times 14, which equals 196. And 15 square is 15 times 15, which equals 225. Good job, guys. All right, next one. And by the way, this will pay off when you're doing your work later on, because you'll have all the answers. Lucky you. Okay, so now it's my turn. So now we're going to cube a number. Remember, a cube is a three-dimensional figure. So where will you see this? Well, when you're calculating the volume, right? That's one. Okay, so let's move on. 1 cube is the same as 1 to the power of 3, which means we're multiplying the 1 by itself 3 times. 1 times 1 times 1. But 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 1 is going to equal 1. 2 cube. 2 cube is the same as 2 times 2 times 2, which is equal to, well, what's 2 times 2? 4. And what's 4 times 2? 8. Now, some of your brains might have tried to play a trick on you and told you that that was equal to 6. Well, what do you think the misconception is there? Okay, so now you could tell your brain, brain, you're not going to trick me anymore. Every time I see 2 to the power of 3, that's the same as 2 times 2 times 2, which is equal to 8. Okay, let's keep going. 3 cube. 3 cube is the same as 3 times 3 times 3, which is equal to 27. Okay, 4 cube. 4 cube is the same as 4 times 4 times 4, which is equal to 64. Now, am I going too fast? You can always pause it so you could take notes, okay? All right, 5 cube. 5 cube is the same as 5 times 5 times 5, which is equal to 125. So these are the first 5 cubes. Now, guess what? Yep, you guessed correctly. It's your turn. So go ahead and pause the video as you calculate the cube for 6 through 12. I hope you paused the video and you came back to see if your work matches my work. If you needed to use a calculator, there's no shame in that. Some of these numbers are going to get pretty big. So let's see, 6 cube. And by the way, if you are using a calculator, don't forget to still write it out. Because again, you want to train that brain of yours, that beautiful brain you have. That 6 cube is the same as 6 times 6 times 6, which equals 216. 7 cube is 7 times 7 times 7, which equals, yep, 343. If you got something different, check your work. 8 cube is 8 times 8 times 8, which equals 512. 9 cube is 9 times 9 times 9, which equals 729. 10 cube, our base 10, which will be used in scientific notation. That means you'll be seeing this in science too. So 10 cube is 10 times 10 times 10, which equals, yep, 1,000. All right, I'm going to give you a last opportunity to pause the video and try some of these problems on your own. Okay, 11 cube. 11 cube is the same as 11 times 11 times 11, which is equal to 1,331. Now, what is 12 cube? Did you get 12 times 12 times 12 jiggles? 1,728. Okay, great job. Let's move on. So now we have reached our learning target, which is solving equations with a square. Anytime you hear the word solve equations or solve, you have to put on your thinking hat of thing 1 and thing 2. Why? Because they always do the opposite. And yes, the opposite of a square is the square root. What is a square root? A square root of a number is a value that when you multiply by itself, it gives the number. So let's look at a square equals 169. First, let's identify the variable. The variable in the equation is a, and it's being square. We're identifying the exponent. Now, because we know that it's being squared, we're going to do the opposite, like thing 1 and thing 2 would do, which is take the square root to solve for the variable. So here we go. We use this sign, which is called a radical sign. In other words, it's a square root. And whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. Now, what does this mean? That the square and the square root are going to simplify, and we're going to get our a equals. Now think of a number that when you multiply it by itself equals 169. Well, you can also use your notes that we did earlier. And what is that number? 13. And 13 is the positive square root for 169. It's also called the principal. Now, do you remember that special note that anytime you square a negative integer, it also equals a positive? Well, therefore, negative 13 squared is going to also equal 169. So guess what? When you're solving equations with a square, you have to give both the positive and the negative unless you're being only asked for the positive or the principal. So let's go ahead and include the negative 13 here. Okay. Next question. Go ahead and pause and try again. Because remember, the more you try, the better you get. So go ahead and pause this video and try it on your own. Did you identify the variable? Did you identify the exponent? Did you say that it's b squared? I agree with you. So how do you solve for it? Yes, you need to take the square root to solve for the variable. Not just from one side, but also the other side. Now what happens? The square and the square root simplify. And we get the b equals. What did you get? Now most students will answer 6 because that's what you want to immediately give, because that's what your brain is telling you, because that's what it sees. But we gotta remember that a negative integer being squared is also equal to a positive. So therefore, negative 6 squared is also equal to positive 36. So therefore, negative 6 is also a solution to this equation. All right, let's try again. Pause the video and work this problem out. Remember, you'll never know until you try. Okay, did you identify the variable? If you said yes and it's C, I agree with you. Is it being squared or cubed? Yep, it's being squared. So what do we need to do? We need to take the square root to solve for the variable. So we simplify the square and the square root. And what did you get for your solution? C is equal to 12. Now, did you remember about the other one? Yes. It's also negative 12. Remember, practice, practice. Train that brain of yours. That anytime you're finding a square root, it's both the positive and the negative, unless you're being told otherwise. Okay, next one. Pause the video and try it out. So on this one, you actually need to remember that the area of a square is equal to the side length square. Now, the image is actually giving you what the side length square is equal to, right? It's giving you the area. So let's go ahead and take the square root to solve for the variable. And in this case, the variable is s. So if 100 meters square is equal to the side length square, we could rewrite that with the variable s. Well, it just looked just like the other ones. So let's go ahead and do what? Yep. Did you take the square root? Remember, you were supposed to do this one on your own. So if you could take it from here, go ahead and pause the video and finish this equation all by yourself. Okay, so what happens when you take the square root of a square? Yep, they simplify each other. So what are you left with? Well, we're left with s, which is the side length, is equal to, well, what's the square root of 100? 10. Now remember, we're talking about a measurement, so we also have to include the unit measurement, which in this case, it's meters. So the side length of the square is 10 meters. All right, great job. Now we're going to look at an example of solving equations with a cube. So here we have v to the power of 3. Now remember, anytime we're saying solve equations, we're thinking like thing 1 and thing 2. And what would they do? Yep, they will do the opposite. So what is the opposite of a cube? Did you say that the opposite of a cube is a cube root? That is correct. Now what is a cube root? A cube root of a number is a value that, when multiplied by itself 3 times, it gives the number. Now let's read the equation. V cubed is equal to 27. The variable in the equation is v, and the exponent is cube, or that little power of 3. Therefore, we're going to cube root to solve for the variable. Yep, let's rewrite it, and let's do the cube root. Now, hopefully you notice the difference between a square root and a cube root. The cube root has a little 3 right there in front of the radical sign to express that you're taking the cube root. So make sure you put that little 3. Now you don't need to put a 2, and that's why we didn't put a 2 when we're taking the square root. Okay, so just like the square and the square root, they simplify each other out. And this one, the cube and the cube root also simplify each other out. Now remember I told you those notes that we were taking earlier would come in handy? Well, look at them. One number multiplied by itself 3 times gives the number 27. Yep, it's 3. Therefore, v is equal to 3. Okay, my persevering students, yep, it's that moment. It's your turn. You're going to be solving for v cubed, which is equal to 343. Please pause the video and come back. All right, did you start by identifying the variable in the equation? Good. And did you identify the exponent? Yep, it's a cube. All right, so did you take the cube root to solve for the variable? If you did, and you simplified, did you get 7? If you did, congratulations, you did it. See, I knew you could. All right, next one. Dylan has a planter in the shape of a cube that holds 8 cubic feet of potting soil. Solve the equation 8 is equal to s cubed to find the side length s of the container. Go ahead and pause the video and try it out. The first thing I would do here is rewrite the equation, identify the variable, and identify the exponent. By doing so, we realize that the s is being cubed. Did you do that? Yeah? Good. Identifying is one of the first steps. And then we could rewrite it and take the cube root, not just on one side, but on both sides. And what happens? Did you remember to simplify? Good. So we get s is equal to 2. Because this was a word problem and we were being asked to find the side length of s of the container, let's write our answer in sentence form. So therefore, the side of the length is 2 feet. Yay, you did it! Now it's your turn to solve equations with a variable that is being squared or cubed. Now remember, to be successful, make sure you identify the variable in the equation, identify if the exponent is a square or a cube, and start thinking like thing 1 and thing 2 by always doing the opposite of what you're being told in the equation. So if it's being squared, find the square root, and if it's being cubed, take the cube root. But remember, always on both sides. Then find the number that multiplies itself to give you the solution. Feel free to use those notes. Thank you for watching.